Thank you, everybody, and welcome to COFMUG January 2017 edition. The edition that almost didn't happen until Dave reminded me that we had a meeting this week. Luckily, I keep a few little topics up my sleeve that can be thrown together and presented really quick, and tonight is real quick. So tonight is one of those. So Patrick is not here today, so I'll be taking care of function of the day as well. And our function of the day is GetLayoutObjectAttribute, which I'm not even sure I can pull up the documentation for because of no internet connection. So let me just write it in here really quick. Let's take a look in the calculation engine here at the syntax. So you'll see that our syntax for GetLayoutObjectAttribute is the name of the object that you want to get the attribute for, and this is of course the object name that you set under the inspector. The name of the attribute you want to get, and there's a whole bunch of examples that I'll go over here in a second, but the documentation online has more. And then optional because you have these curly braces here, you can also specify the repetition number or the portal row number if you're getting a value from repeating fields or from portals on a layout. So how is this function useful? So what our use case today for it is going to be, I actually put here first, is getting the contents of a text box on a layout. So I'm going to go in layout mode here really quick, and you can see that this text box here has the current date symbol merged as merge text on here. So when I go back into browse mode, it says 1/19/2017. So the calculation for this is, I think I named that text box or something. So we're going to show a custom dialog that has GetLayoutObjectAttribute, date text, so that's what I named it, and then content. So content, the attribute gets like the content of what's in that text box for me. So it's not going to get this merge code. I'm not going to get current date. I'm actually going to get that date back myself. So using this to return like the current value that's on the layout, you can use this to do some types of comparisons. So like you can actually pull the result of any merge field, merge text, merge value out and check it to see if it's what it's supposed to be. So you can use this for like show hide object when. You can use this for other calculations if you need to like put an entire dictionary's worth of text into a text box and then resize it down to 5 pixels and hide it in the like no man's zone. You can now call that content into wherever you need it later on without having to copy and paste a giant block of text into your scripts. So we're going to go over that technique in the regular presentation, but that's super useful. So we've got a repeating field here. This is 3 repetitions. You can see repeating field 2 and 3. So I just typed in repeat after me in there. So if I use that same GetLayoutObjectAttribute and then I specify content again on this repeating field, I'm only going to get the first value out of that repeating field. And this is the same for portals too. If I don't specify which repetition or which portal field I want, it's not going to return everything to me, which would be ideal. It's only going to return the first repetition or the first portal row's worth of information. So if you do specify a repetition, you can get the second or third or however many repetitions. And then if you want to get all of the values like this, repeat after me, this is not done with getRepetition at all. This is done with a list function. So list is the function that you want to use if you want to get all of the values of a repeating field into one smaller list to use. So again, that's just an example for like right tool for the right job sort of thing, just so you know. So I put a green box here a little green rectangle is just a rectangle object. So I'm going to get this, and one of the other things you can get is position information, which Dave knows very familiarly from drawing little red boxes and approximating where on the screen a field is. So there's all of these attributes on the left you can get. Bounds gives you all of the boundaries, left, right, top, bottom, and left, right, top, bottom. Oh shoot, I forget what the fifth one is. Is it Z index? I think it's like which order in the stack it is. Maybe not. Shoot.
Actually getting a fifth value there, or is that just 0.0?
I think I'm actually getting a value there of 0. So, well, left, right, top, bottom, that's the distance from the left, right, top, or bottom it is on the screen, how wide it is, and how tall it is. So you can do that type of stuff to see, I don't know, if anything's bigger than you thought it was going to be, or not where it's supposed to be on the layout. Or if you want to try recreating a layout based on your metadata.
Or if the window has been resized, you want to know if this box still has room to display 3 or 4 lines of text, or if it's been shrunk to its smallest format.
Yep.
Or I think it even works. Doesn't it still work in like preview mode? It's shrunk to nothing. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a resizing region, you can tell how tall that particular thing is.
So since it's GetLayoutObjectAttribute, it really works on all kinds of objects. Every object that you put on a layout, you can use. I really wish, and I've submitted a feature request for this, that they would do getPart attribute as well for actual layout parts. That would be super useful in a number of ways. So determining current tab, this is another one where if I get this, it says tab 1 is the front panel, and then if I click to tab 3 and hit it again, it says tab 3 is the front panel. So there's another attribute called is this active panel. So basically I wrote a quick case statement. There's probably a better way to do this, but so if tab 1 is front panel, so is front panel is the attribute for that, it'll just tell you which one is the frontmost panel. And now for portal row objects. So I did a little bit of trickery here. You can see I've got 2 buttons called B1 and B2 here. And if I click in one of these records, in test number 2, you'll see that B1 disappears. And that's because I have a hide condition on that button that says if get active row portal row number is 2, so if you're on portal row number 2, it's going to hide this object, and it hides it on all the rows. So if I click on 2, that row disappears. So what do you think happens when I get, well, first off, let me show you what happens in number 1. So if I'm in test number 1, and I say get number 2, I get the names of those objects that are on that portal row. The value field that's there, the button 1 and the button 2. So if that object is hidden, what do you think happens?
I would think it'd still be there just as an attribute.
It's not gone.
Man, I can't fool anybody. Yeah, no, it's not gone. The button's not gone, it's just being hid from the layout, but it's still there in the layout definition. So it does still show up. Man, I'm going to come up with some hard trivia for next month and bring a prize, and you guys can get all my leftover FileMaker promo materials. So the last one, which obviously isn't going to work very well because, as you can see, the internet connection appears to be offline. Thank you for that, is scraping web content. Now, before insert from URL existed, this was the preferred way to check websites for content, but of course insert from URL is better because it inserts the fully rendered page into a text field, where GetLayoutObjectAttribute, if you run it before it's done loading, it just doesn't work. So There's two tags that really have to do with the web viewer. Source is one. This is going to give you the URL of the web viewer. I had a list of common misconceptions here. It was going to be my lead out joke from the last portal, but it's all ruined now. You guys are too smart. So I scraped a blank portal and I got a blank response, or a blank web viewer, got a blank response. But ideally, if you scrape a web viewer that has content in it at all, it's going to give you the actual rendered HTML code of whatever the web viewer is currently showing at that moment.
You were saying that insert from URL inserts the fully rendered HTML?
Correct.
Not to the best of my knowledge. Isn't insert from URL just a wrapper on curl? It doesn't ever render that HTML. That's the problem with insert from URL. What? That I'm not sure about. But
it is the source of, if you were to load that page in a browser, it is the source of that page.
But only the pre-rendering source. So if that source is
post-rendering
doing Ajax that loads content after the page loads, you won't get that.
There are things that
Whereas
can break
this
it, but if you have a PHP that loads dynamic custom web publishing information into a list, you will get every single one of those list items because it has rendered on the server before the view was delivered to the client.
So I would suggest that it's not rendered, it was just populated. It built a page and sent that as the response. So what it does is when you ask for a page, insert URL gives you that exact code of the page that was sent to it as a response by the server.
Correct.
Server-side code did that.
Yeah.
Whereas using this scrape will actually get you it after the browser has rendered it. So if the browser is making modifications to the code that displays or anything like that, this will actually get you that. So I always use insert from URL first.
Yeah.
But very often what I get is a crazy little wrapper page that references 3 pieces of JavaScript, and that's it. That was what the response was, but client-side JavaScript was then going to edit that page and prevent it. So when you get not what you're looking for.
And that is a wonderful use case about why it's frustrating to deal with people that use JavaScript for the full UI of their page.
Along with PHP. Even today, there are really good reasons to use this web scrape.
Well,
I'll use the insert from URL if it works, but very often.
Honestly, you should try doing something that doesn't require you having to scrape the web first, like integrating with an API.
I was assuming from the beginning that we'd already reached the point where we needed the web scrape.
Right, but our 11 YouTube watchers won't know that because they haven't been to the meetings before.
I think 11 of our YouTube users are
Joe just keeps refreshing the page to view it some more. All right.
Okay.
So there are plenty more use cases for this function. I've probably already spent a few more minutes than we normally spend on function of the day going over this stuff, but this one's it's useful, and we're going to use it as a lead-in to, well, shoot. We may not be using it as a lead-in to the next part because of the internet restriction. So yeah, I should probably get out my phone tether for this next part. Yeah, I was going to do that. So
That's about reasonable to do.
yep. So we are taking like a 30-second delay here so I can load some JavaScript files. So what we're going to do tonight, hopefully, is teach you how to make a JavaScript widget. Now, what that means is that you have your FileMaker solution, or FileMaker custom app for those PC of you. And use a web viewer, load some JavaScript, load some FileMaker data, and boom, you have a little area of your screen with a graphical representation of your FileMaker data that you could otherwise not get natively in FileMaker. And the reason that is so important is, well, obviously it lets you do stuff you can't do in FileMaker. But also, once you start doing this sort of technique, you can get into the more complicated stuff, such as USB. Yep, there we go. Let's see if that gets me where I need to be. Sorry, we're going to take a small break for figuring this out. It says connected. We shall see. Oh, hey, it is connected.
Oh,
Yay. All right.
Yeah.
Nope. Well, we'll stick to the new record then. Okay. So in this example, what I have done is I've created a donut chart, because who doesn't like donuts? Now, right now, all that I've done here is I took the demo page. We're using a package called morris.js, morris.js. And they have a sample file that comes when you download the JavaScript package that says, like, here's how you make a donut chart. So I took all of the HTML from that, shoved it into a web viewer, and it draws a chart. But it's not integrated with FileMaker at all. It works like you would expect it to work, mousing over these things, but this information isn't coming out of FileMaker. And as we've seen, it's not safe against the internet connection not being available. So how can we fix that? Well, first let's go take a look at what this code looks like. So this is my actual web viewer calculation. And this is just straight out when I've guarded against all the double quotes to make sure that it doesn't end my calculation prematurely. I'm showing data type text HTML, indicating that I'm loading custom HTML. And then you'll see, or not, because my Zoom is being weird.
Oh, did you have showing?
Sorry?
Is it showing?
No, it's just
I think that might all be next door.
That might be next door.
So you'll see here we're loading 3 JavaScript sources here, and this is what won't work if you're not connected to the internet. So we're loading a library called Raphael, which is a graphics library. We're loading jQuery, which is a performance framework for a JavaScript framework, and then we're using Morris, which is our charting framework to make the chart. Just some other stuff, title, body. There's a div, and here's a script. So this is some actual JavaScript right here that's going to draw this chart. And I'm sorry, I'm done with Zoom because FileMaker has this thing right here and it's messing with the Zoom. So essentially what we're doing for our script is we're creating an object, which is our donut chart. We're saying what element of the page, where should this go? So this says element donut example, and that just means that when it draws this chart, it's going to stick it in this HTML div that has the same ID, donut example. And then here's some data. So this is eventually going to be the portion that we replace with data out of FileMaker. And then colors, which we are also going to replace out of FileMaker. And then resize true is just something I was playing around with. It's supposed to redraw it to the largest size of whatever screen you're in, but the web viewer doesn't like refreshing automatically when you resize FileMaker screen. Closing out your tags and you're done. Pretty simple. That's all it takes to draw like a nice chart in a web page like that. So where it becomes dynamic instead of static is loading these 2 arrays. Now, you'll see this first array of data actually has multiple attributes in it, so that's why it's got curly braces around each line. JavaScript arrays, each line ends in a comma, except for the last line. So it's a lot like the let statement, except with commas instead of semicolons. Same thing for down here, except this one we only have one value and it's not named. So these are hexadecimal colors that correspond to our chart colors. So, and that's all. That's all that goes on our web viewer, and that draws this chart. So, let's get some data in here. So let's see. Dave ate this many donuts. Joe ate this many donuts, and Mike ate this many donuts. So Dave put in a respectable 5. Mike ate 4 because he's on a diet, going on vacation in a few weeks. And Joe took the whole rest of the box home and had a very good, yeah. So now I'm going to grab some HTML color codes, and I've already got some up here. So let's just copy these into place. That didn't work right. Was that red? That is not the color it says it's supposed to be. Well, that's what you get for using unregistered custom functions. We'll see if it shows up right in the chart. Oh, we only really need 4 colors, so it should only load these first 3 green colors for us. So these are the hexadecimal color values. That's what normal HTML. You can usually use RGB values interchangeably in browsers nowadays. Some people prefer one, some prefer the other. I'm kind of old school. Back when HTML4 you had to use the hexadecimal, so but this is just red, green, blue. And actually FileMaker prefers RGB. FileMaker does not process hexadecimals without a custom function. And even with a custom function it doesn't, because that's not supposed to be pink. All right, so we have some data now. Now we need to put data into our web viewer. So there's a few ways to do this. You can do it in global variables. You can do it directly. You can do it with execute SQL. You can do it with a summary function even, and a substitute wrapped around that if you want to. There's a number of different ways. The way I'm going to do it, though, is easy to do. I'm going to do it with a button tied to a script. So I'm going to create a script that says load chart data. I'm going to set 2 global variables here. Set variable. I'm going to call this one chart data. I'm going to make another one, and this one is going to be color data. So you'll remember before that when I'm in layout mode here, that my data needs to look a specific way. So essentially, I need this. So I'm going to cancel out of that, cancel out of that. So we're going to do colors first here. And there's a couple ways you can do this with when you're looping through repeating values. I like doing a little loop with a counter. That's just going to be the first time this runs, that's going to be 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. And then I'm going to do exit loop if get repetition. And I don't know what this is called. Oh, I just called it table colors. And then number, I'm going to pass it my little counter here. So it's basically going to loop through each one of those repetitions. And I'm going to tell it to just exit if it is empty. And then that way, once we're done with the last one, with the last color, we'll be done. So we will set set variable color data as color data. Or we can do something easy here. There's, like I said, there's a number of ways to do it. I'm just doing it fast off the top of my head. So if color data is empty, I want is empty color data. This will give us the first time through the loop. We're just going to get, we're going to quote get repetition. And this needs to be in quotes, remember, because it was in our code. Then our counter. So if this is the first time through, we're just going to make a new quoted line. But for the rest of the times through, it's going to be our existing color data and a comma, and then this whole part right here. So this just means we're just, if it's empty, we're putting in the first line in. If it's not empty, we're adding a comma and then putting in the next line. And then that way, the last time through the loop, you don't have a trailing comma on the end of it. Yeah, one of these. No, I'm missing it around quote. Right there. 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah. All right, well, I'm doing quick and dirty, just you guys can optimize this to your heart's content later. So ironically, well, not ironically, I shouldn't say ironically, but we're going to do the same thing for chart data when we do chart data. So, and make sure that if you're using a loop counter that you unset that, or set it back to 0 if you want to, depending on how you want to do that. That way you don't accidentally start from like wherever that one left off. So we got chart data, and we're going to do the exact same thing. If chart data is empty, we're going to do quote, and then so this one we'll use, okay, hold on, let me actually go and grab our JavaScript there so I know how this is supposed to look. So that would be good. So we need to rebuild this line of code. And everybody's like, don't ever do live code in presentations, but you know, I have no idea what they're talking about. It's so easy. So for this one, it's going to be on our first line, it's going to be quotes around this label and this space. Then we're going to use the quote function around our chart data and title. And then we want and. Then there's our comma and value. Then we're going to want another quote around our record value. And then we're going to end this curly brace up here. So that's a little bit longer because we're merging 2 fields worth of data in here. So that's what we do if we don't have a record already. If we do have a record, then we're going to do chart data and our comma, and then I'm going to put this on a new line because I would be dumb not to. Quote, label, blah, blah, blah. And this one we're not using a double function, so that should be it. Okay, so that's going to give us both of our arrays as global variables. So somebody would be quick to point out that, hey, you're getting related data, but you're not doing it the right way. So So we can do something like chart data, using chart data, show only the related records, go to record, request page first.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, good. There's a
Sorry
gap
about
there.
that.
Just make sure your computer's okay. Mine's fine.
Yeah. Sorry.
Uh,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Adding a freeze window here so they don't see this taking place. Going back to the original layout, not the field. Go layout, original layout. Da-da-da. And then once we're done, we're just going to want to refresh object. Or you could use refresh objects. You should use refresh window. You could do set web viewer with the resulting code. If you want to make all of your code here and throw it in a web viewer, you can use set web viewer. I forget exactly if it's refresh object or refresh window that works here, so I'm just going to do both because I'm lazy. But that's a horrible idea, and you should test and make sure which one works. So I'm going to say external results because I don't think it's join data. And I'm going to say web viewer is my object name. So that is there. I'm going to make sure I name this web viewer so that it works when I want to refresh it. Now that we have that, I'm going to make a backup copy of this just so I've got it.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, you know, in case I might mess something up. So let's take a look again at our calculations. Now first we had color data. So what we want to do is we want to escape our FileMaker calculation right here, and we want to insert our color data. Right there. And that's all we need to do there. And we need to do the same thing for our chart data. Chart data. So that's really all you need to do in order to substitute your own data into that web viewer. Now there's more complicated things you can do, like you can create FMP URL links that will allow you to click in your web viewer and perform an action back in your browser, and maybe that's another topic, but not for today, mostly because this chart package doesn't have URLs built into the buttons. And I don't want to hack their JavaScript file because I haven't looked at it in years, I don't think. So if you can imagine that that is that easy, how do we future-proof this so we can use this offline as well? So these URLs up here, where this JavaScript is stored, are obviously the breaking point of keeping this offline. Now if I go to that URL, I actually get the JavaScript. So I can actually save this page as a JavaScript file on my desktop and like use Sublime or something and open it up. Open desktop morris.js, and here it is. It's all one big line. Lovely. I'm going to take that and off my page in the Twilight Zone, I'm going to drop a new text box in here and paste that entire big giant thing in there. And then I'm going to use the inspector to resize it to a more manageable width of, say, 200 points by 100. And I'm going to name this Morris, because that's our Morris.js. So now, what I can do, now that I've named that and pasted that entire JavaScript text file of however many thousands of characters in there, I can come back in here and change this to be script. And I believe, well, I shouldn't use, I don't, sometimes you'll want to put text JavaScript so it knows what you're talking about, but it's got a pretty good idea what it's doing here. So I'm going to do script, exit out of the FileMaker calc. I'm going to do our GetLayoutObjectAttribute function of Morris and get the content out of there. So you can see now that this is how we load our own JavaScript that is now future-proofed against an internet connection or an internet outage. So you know their system's going to work if it's deployed locally or if it's deployed hosted or wherever, because it's now.
And in some ways you're future-proofed if they make changes to it.
Yeah, if they change the JavaScript and it somehow breaks your page.
Well, yeah,
Yeah. So let's put a refresh button on here. A little quick icon of, where is the, there it is. Form a script. Load chart data. I really wish that this was defaulted to always having a cursor on. I think it's like when they came out with FileMaker Go that they changed it. All right, so we have data, we have colors. Let's see if we get a chart.
Yay!
Well, it's technically is there. It's got data points. I don't know why it's got, maybe it's complaining about there being 4 colors. What's going on?
Much better.
Yeah, now it's got, now it's even worse. All right, so let's take a look at our data viewer and see what our data viewer looks like. So here's our chart data. So something weird is going on here because our color data shouldn't look like that. So did we, maybe I think I deleted the points where I cleared it out first. It's a variable, chart data. Color data. So right? Chart data, color data. That should be right. I didn't put line breaks in there, but that shouldn't matter. So we've got an empty record.
Double quote at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I delete that, maybe we'll see what that does. But this one doesn't have, although it's using the same, oh, because I didn't put a go to next record in. Whoops. Do. Dave surreptitiously sneaks in to get the donuts. Although,
I just can't see it well enough from back there.
yeah.
But I'm trying to.
Oh, and I'm also getting the repetition from colors instead of getting the field value right here as the exit condition. So this needs to be get record number equals get found count, because we're going through related data now. The data itself looked okay. And then this one, color data.
Actually, since you're in the local records, you can skip the exit loop and just go to record request page next, exit after last.
But I don't like that because it generates an error code. That is not 0. It generates 101, record not found, if you use next, exit after last.
It's easy as long as you just don't do any error checking.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. All right, color data still has the empty one at the end there, so it is either thinking that it's...
You cleared it out, but there's still a record there. So it's getting, now you're looping through the records. It's still finding a blank record there.
Well, but still, I should be able to do this then. And maybe sometimes you know. Well, at least the data is correct now. I'm wondering if the text is too long and it's screwing with it.
You mean the JavaScript library?
No, not that. The text of the...
Does that look like?
I mean the text of the values. What does what look like?
So it's basically, actually, no, I was just looking at what was
Well, I can try putting this one back in to see if it doesn't like the JavaScript we downloaded. If that is the case, then so be it.
So reconstructing and mapping to really complex document formats like this was about 80% of my job for the last 6 years that I was doing this stuff.
So
I highly advise changing exactly one thing each time and making sure that the chart still renders.
Right.
So, that you
So
can always go,
actually,
oh,
I'm
it was that
wondering
I broke.
Zoom. Nope, it's not Zoom. Huh.
Make sure there's a cache there too. Is the other chart rendering? No.
That is still rendering the, so actually the exit loop if here should be before that happens. And that's what's creating the empty one, because that exit loop if is in the wrong place. So that should actually fix that data, which it does. So that's all right. I mean, will it like it any better if I put actual line breaks in here? So that value is quoted. Oh, you know what? That value is a number. So I don't believe that is supposed to be quoted. Let's take a look at our example. Look at that. So value is a integer, and unlike FileMaker, which will automatically do the translation for you, JavaScript does not. So in our chart data here, we actually do not need this second quote around this. So for our actual numeric value, JavaScript requires that to be presented as an integer, so no quotes around it like you would for a string of text. So let's give that a try. Ah, look at that. So we have our custom colors. If I change one of these, let's see, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and change this color to like easy, something like that. There we go. I only know what different shades of gray are. I'm not creative enough to do any colors.
Colorful.
Let's change it to 8 and see what it gives us. There we go, that's back to blue. So we've got Joe, Mike, and Dave. And as you refresh your data, so if Joe feels bad and he tosses away half the donuts he took home, there you get a more balanced graph. So now we're loading our FileMaker data, we're loading that data. So let's take care of actually loading one of our JavaScript files. So let's try this again, where we do this.
In that data, could you just put that on a trigger that would just refresh it?
Sure. Anytime you get to the page, sometimes if you use like execute SQL or like a summary function in here with a substitute, it can sometimes just change on its own.
Yeah.
Get layout object attribute. This is Morris and content. Okay, so let's see if this still works. Look at that. Yep. So I've taken that chart JavaScript and I've put it over on the side, and now we're loading it from locally in our FileMaker file. And you can do that with as many until you reach the limit of what you can fit on an object on a layout. You're never going to hit that limit.
What were the other two that they had?
So there's 3 JavaScript libraries that make this work. The first one is Raphael, and Raphael is a JavaScript library for drawing things, drawing circles, drawing squares, different things like that. So it's used by another, people will take these existing scripts and build stuff on top of it that does stuff like charting.
So you would need to do the same exact thing
For the other 2 scripts, yeah.
Right.
And then jQuery, like I said, is the library that just has a number of functions that make JavaScript easier, and like substituting out like donut example for this element donut example. That's a perfect like jQuery thing. And then our actual chart, the thing that puts those first two scripts together in order to draw charts. So, I mean, other things you can do to this is you can actually do like webviewer styling. Say I want no fill on here. I don't want a line around it. I don't want anything. I don't want any padding. Just all zeros. I think usually there's a minimal style in some of these. So now, like, I don't have any CSS in here that's telling this to be transparent, so I'm not sure it's going to. But I can add that. So since in here you're just doing straight HTML, I can do style, and then I can say body, background, none, and style. And let's see if that will do it for us. Nope. All right, so probably the JavaScript itself is rendering that white background, or something else that I'm missing is, although just to make sure it isn't, I can do background, or sorry, that should actually be background dash color. Oh, well, it is letting me do it. Huh. So background color should be none. Well, it just doesn't like none, I guess.
Seeing the layout?
No, the layout is gray because
Yeah.
that's what's showing.
That's the bottom.
See, like I took this out.
Right.
So I mean, I could,
Match the layout.
yeah, I can match the layout. That is.
Does the webviewer have state styles? Active styling?
That's a good question. Hover pressed in focus. No. Pressed. No. No. No.
No
Nope.
chance there's a white background behind the whole thing? So
No.
when you make it transparent,
No,
it
I
just,
don't know. So what I can do though is select the body part, and it's got the hex right here in the color selector. At least on Mac it does. And then I can just drop that in there. Color. Make sure to have a pound sign in front of there, otherwise it'll get confused. And now there we go. So this is now very well blending in with our layout. It's probably, it might be, no, I thought I took the line out. It might just be the active frame, or it might be that it's not at a size that fits. Like, or it might just be that web viewers aren't the best. Oh no, you know what? That line was there beforehand. I think it's the progress bar.
Oh.
Look at this. Status messages, no. While interaction, yes, and automatically encode. There we go. It was the status bar. So yeah, I mean, this obviously versus the FileMaker native, like built-in charts, is desirable. Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so not only can you do this type of charts, but you can do charts that you can't do in FileMaker, like scatter charts and radar charts and donut charts and
Or even just basic charts that you could actually click on and interact with.
yeah. So one of the next steps would be to find a chart that you like to use that has the ability to pass links as well, so that each section of this chart is linked, and then you drop an FMP URL in there that points back to this open file. Tell it to run a script with this parameter and use that ID, and then you can go to Joe's record or Mike's record or Dave's record, or you can have it fire off an email. You can do whatever you can do with FileMaker now that you're passing that back to a script. So this is JavaScript integration. I have no idea what time it is, because there's too many menus in FileMaker. 7:22. All right, so we're doing pretty good on time. Questions or anything you want to try to do to play around with this some more?
The only thing I would throw in here is we just use this for charting, but there are tens of thousands of things that you can do with JavaScript that use the exact same technique you just demoed.
One of
You
my
can, like GUI objects and sliders and weird looking buttons that do different things, and all of that stuff follows basically the exact same pattern. Is find the JavaScript code, find the code that controls where the data and the inputs go, swap it one way or the other with the FileMaker content, and you're done.
There is one significant gotcha, I think, for this technique, is that Windows users will hear that little IE/edge page loading clicky sound every time you go to the layout of one of the objects.
Yeah.
You can't do anything about it. It's really annoying. So if you've got a whole bunch of Windows users and they start calling you and say, why is my database clicking all the time? Because you put a JavaScript terminal down.
So you can, what you should do is use the beep script step to make it more annoying, so that they don't notice the clicking anymore.
And then it will just turn off the sound on their machine.
Yeah.
So is that a Windows?
Yeah.
It's a
problem?
feature.
Feature.
It's probably something that they added actually specifically for accessibility way back in the day,
Well,
and
the
they'll never
browser
forget
doesn't
about
do
it.
anymore. It's just the WebViewer and FileMaker.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing as like a WebViewer object and like when you're doing Xcode development and stuff. It's the object that the OS gives you to deal with to load web stuff. So, like for everybody on the community that's like, well, why can't the WebViewer like do blah blah blah? And it's like, listen, do you know what this thing actually is? Like, because it was the best feature. It was the moneymaker for version 8.5 because it was like a half release when they came out with the WebViewer, stuck it into FileMaker, and everybody's like, why am I paying for this upgrade? I'll just wait to 9. And everybody skipped 8.5, and I was getting onto FileMaker. I was like, holy God, man, I can do all my web programming like now and like integrate it. And so it's cool, but when you actually read into how outdated the OS level object that loads web stuff is, it's a little
Like I used this a couple years ago when I was just learning this technique to build an entire status toolbar in a WebViewer. And it worked really well. Like I had the click back working and call scripts and things like that. But just couldn't get rid of the clicking. So I never really got to use it myself.
So one of my favorite use cases was somebody, it was one of the Andy Lacates, I think it was, who came up with a method of array sorting records with JavaScript through the WebViewer faster than you could loop through it, or, it was for deduping, that's what it was for. So if you have a whole bunch of records, just say you're on a layout with a 10,000 records, and you know that probably like 1,000 of them are duplicate records. What he was doing is he was taking the list function, because list doesn't dedupe. He was getting that field as the list of the data. So he would get all 10,000 of those values in there. And he would stick it in a WebViewer wrapped with a JavaScript function that would process that entire list of values in like 1/10 of a second.
So it's just getting an array as a set or something like that?
Something like that. And what he would do is he would use that to, I think what he was doing is he was getting the actual duplicates out so that he could very easily identify which ones were duplicates and then somehow omit it the other way. But I mean, the long and short of it was he was sending a large chunk of data into the WebViewer using JavaScript to parse it light years faster than what FileMaker's calculation engine could do in the same way using recursion or whatever. And then getting whatever result he wanted back out of that, all in under like a second.
another cool example was the JQ the jQuery like table view widget that they have. I think it was C code built into one of their files, where it was they replaced their portals with this thing, so you could do like column by column sorting in the portal rather than the web viewer. They made it look
Are you talking about my demo file from DEF CON last year where I did it for WebDirect?
maybe, but C code did it first.
Yeah, Bart Simpson of seed code.
Have you ever used, have you ever tried it with like Leaflet.js for like mapping?
I haven't. I know people will use the Google Maps API too. People will use the Google Maps API to do it, but something about the new version of Google Maps API, I think, breaks it. I think some security.
Yeah, API.
Well, no, it wasn't that. It was like one of their endpoints just no longer works without OAuth authentication.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, everybody's like super pissed about that one because everybody had a bunch of Google Map things built into FileMaker that just stopped working. And I was like, well, just go back to the. Well, they were using it for KML data, the geocoded data, to like plot a bunch of points on a chart or draw directions or whatever on the fly. So they were not happy about that.
How would you
I actually think I have under documents. Let's not look at that password cracker. What direct? Files. Table view. Here we go.
Not a thing.
So here is a demo file from last year. And if this is just something I loaded a whole bunch of contacts into. And I always forget until I open this file that the first contact in here is named James Butt. So here is a JavaScript-based table view. And you'll notice that I can click on all of these and it'll sort ascending or descending instantly. That's 500 records and it's local. So yeah, maybe you could do this with FileMaker, but can you expand dynamically to only show 10 rows at a time? It's got pagination built into it.
Yes.
So you can page between different sets of records. It's got a quick find, so if I wanted to find Mr. Butt, there he is. Or Butte, California, I guess. So it's doing all that searching on the fly in the web viewer. And obviously it is basically what you do is you turn all of your FileMaker data into a big HTML table. So like table tr td for each of the cells. You shove the entire thing in a web viewer and you add I'll show you. It's in layout mode. 7 layout mode, CWP contacts. Oh, no, this is probably not going to work that way. Nope. So there is an accompanying web page that I have that is pulling the data out in CWP. So let's go to code and show you that. Index.php.
Another example of the same kind of web viewer technique is there's a couple people that have done like markdown parsers where you just type into a text field in FileMaker and they use the web viewer to
There we go.
process the text and render it.
So here are our two jQuery we're loading again here. And this is being hosted locally on my FileMaker server on this laptop, which is why I can refer to it as js-jQuery. That's just relative to the folder that this is sitting in. But if I wanted to, I could copy and paste all of jQuery into my file, all of jQuery data table. So this data tables is the actual thing that's taking care of converting my entire HTML table into that. Now you'll see this simple function here. This is just whenever this document So this is referring to the document. The document is the web page itself. And it says ready, and ready means that when you load this, perform this function. And this is just function because I'm telling it what to do right here. And I'm saying take our table, whatever our table name is, and the table name here I specified as the layout name from FileMaker, or whatever layout I passed to it. So it is turning that table into a data table. So it's going to transform all of that into what we saw. Now the rest of this is just custom web publishing to load the data, connect to your database. Find all command will pull all the records from that table. Some error checking, and it'll convert it to a table if we have more than 0 results here. So essentially, we draw our HTML table the same kind of way that we did. Instead of looping through records in a FileMaker script, we're looping through in PHP here to draw. Well, this is for all of our fields. So it's looking at that layout that we passed in to see what fields are on that layout, and it's automatically creating our header row. And then it's going through each one of those records, and for each one of those fields on that layout, it's creating an HTML table cell. And then before and after all of those field values, it's just starting and stopping a row. Then when it's done, you just end, you close the table, you close your if statement, you close your HTML, and you're done. This is it. So less than 100 lines of code to load the information dynamically. So this was designed, and if I go back now to the web viewer, you'll be able to see this now. So this was designed to be run with any layout in your FileMaker system that is accessible from custom web publishing. So if I want to take this from contacts and put it on companies, I just copy this layout, change the table occurrence and the layout name, update this web viewer to have that layout name in it, and now when I reload this, it will dynamically load all of that stuff into this table view. And you'll see it did that CWP call in just a second or two to load and parse all 500 records of data into that HTML table. And I'm sure there's ways you could probably optimize it to make it faster. I'm not a terribly great PHP developer, but enough to do some pretty knockout stuff. And you can do styling in here that's got mouse over effects. Like I said, all the sorting is built in dynamically. The JavaScript takes care of all of that for you. It takes care of the searching, takes care of the pagination, takes care of stretching too. I thought at one point of time I had the web viewer so you could stretch it back and forth and it would auto size these fields. You could probably do some dynamic stuff so that these are linked to email to pop open a new email. Like I said, you could probably do script stuff tied into this. So if you think this technique isn't powerful, going from a little tiny donut chart, take a look at that. By the way, free file in my DevCon session materials from last year, so feel free to use it and abuse it to your heart's content. I think INN006 was the session number. So if you just search for that, you should find it. INN002, sorry. 6 was I'm making that up. I had 2 and 3. If you need to do, if you do need to do e-payments as well, INN003, there's some good sample files there. But if you search for INN002 DevCon 2016, you will find those demo files and the recording of my session at DevCon, which somebody, and I quote, said, he did a bunch of cool stuff with WebDirect. So what?
It gave you a little raise.
Right. It was at least 1 star, so it wasn't 0 stars, but only because
Take a little
DevCon,
credit.
only because FileMaker wouldn't let you do that in DevCon Digger.
They did a bunch of cool stuff with WebDirect.
So what?
So I'm going to outro out of our meeting here from QuickTime. It's been a fun meeting, and hopefully when we upload this to YouTube, somebody will find value out of it. And if you're in the Central Ohio area, attend our FileMaker user group the third Thursday of every month. Thank you.